Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, the High Guy Jacobs, and today we take a look at part 2 of our 3-part series where we're looking at the ranged heroes, within the game. And currently we are going to be looking at the rally heroes. Last we looked at the field battle heroes where we talked about Sophie, Lynn, Jack, and Chun. And this one, we're going to be talking about rally heroes, where we're going to be going through Julia, Bard, Nora, and Johnny. Now, why am I putting Julia specifically in rally when she can do so well on the field? Well, because there are good choices in the field battle section already. Sophie and Lynn, for example, if you're looking for 2 or even 3 leaders, you've got Sophie, Lynn, and Jack. And those 3, for example, in my opinion, for field battle, are going to be a better hero than Julia. Now, does that mean that Julia loses her capability of being the most flexible hero in the game? No, I still think she is absolutely one of the most flexible heroes. You can use her everywhere, but I'm putting her in the rally position because it allows me to make for better content. That's the total reason. It allows me to separate things a little bit better, and she does really, really well in the rally position. So let's start this off by looking at Julia. Where is Julia? Near the top, Julia the Great Magician. The Great Magician, since she was added, has made waves in the game. Like I said, still super flexible. Tons of single target damage. Comes equipped with the silence when she's awakened. Has a decent amount of rage regeneration. A fantastic hero all around. And as we go through her skills, pardon me, I've got the hiccups. You'll see exactly why, and I'll explain why I believe that she does well in the rally position. Not that she can't work in field, right? Not that she's not going to work out in the field and things like that and helping with silences and stuff like that, but you'll see why, in my opinion, and I'll hopefully make it clear why I think she really shines in the rally position. So first and foremost, she's bringing skills and the range squad talent trees. Her first ability, Stunning Magic, is only costing 1,000. It's going to be dealing 12,500 damage and restoring 100 rage when it happens. So you're already starting out with at an advantage, right? More skills, more damage, 12,500. Yes, it's a little low in comparison to some of these coming in at 13,500 and things like that. But with the amount of times that she'll be putting this skill out and the amount of time that she'll be spanning her skills, it actually counters out very nicely. Next, we've got Escape Preparation. It's a passive skill increasing range squad attack by 20% and increasing range squad defense by 20%. Granted, it's only 20% when we're talking some of these other ones getting 30% or more, but an addition of 20% and 20% is nothing to gawk at, especially when now we're talking about range squad defense. Okay? Next, we've got Mind Reading as a passive skill, reducing damage taken from basic attacks by 20%. When rage is more than 90%, increases skill damage dealt by 17% for 4 seconds. So if you lead with her, now all of a sudden this 12,500 is getting an additional 20% from your basic or from your range squad attack. You're getting an increased skill damage, right? So there's a modifier from your attack. There's a modifier from your skill damage. At going up 17%, and then a flat basic reduction of 20% of basic attacks just reduces it, which is really decently tanky if you think about it. So not only is she dealing defense here, but now she's removing 20% of that basic attack damage. Okay. And now we've got Impenetrable as a passive skill, increasing ranged HP by 40% with a 20% chance of being immune, a 60% chance of being immune to taking increased damage. So do you see how she, not only can she play everywhere, but she brings a lot of things that range needs. She brings damage, she brings HP, right? 40% HP, she brings defense, she brings attack, increased skill damage, increased rage. She really is a jack of all trades, even though she's a Julia of all trades. And then once you have her awakened, now we see her damage factor get awakened, so we're at 13,750. But she also silences the enemy for 3 seconds and restores 120 rage. So we got more skills happening more often, silence is coming out more often, right? Damage factor now on par with everybody else. Increased skill damage, increased skill damage is 17%. increased skill or range squad attack 20%, 20%, 40% HP. She's just a beast. She's still a beast. And this is one of the reasons why I think she works really well in rallies. Not only is she dealing single target damage, which in rallies is kind of important, right? You're dealing it to your single targets. But you got 40% HP and a 20% reduction on basic attacks and a ton of damage, which is kind of exactly what rallies need. And when you see her paired with Bard, for example, who we'll talk about next, and you see the synergy between the two of them, it just makes sense that you would run her in rally. Okay? Again, doesn't mean you can't run her in field. If you don't have Sophie, Lynn, or Jack, and you only have Julia Awakened, and you've got a massive Julia Awakened, use her in the field. She's a beast. Okay? I'm not saying she's not good in the field. I'm just saying that the game kind of plays it out better for her to work in rally. Okay? She synergizes well within the rally situation. Okay? After that, we're going to talk about Bard. Because I mentioned him, it's time to talk about him. Bard the Sea Sovereign. This is the gentleman with the super weapon. The MK7 handheld naval gun. The big kahuna. The guy who's obviously seen a lot and biomechanically updated. I'm not sure if that's like an arc, like Iron Man. Like a reactor on his heart. Except it's on the right-hand side, so I'm not even sure what it's plugged in for. It's weird. Anyways, this is the Bard. Now, Bard is specific to Siege. Okay? Specific to running rallies. Yes, you can run him outside once you have him awakened and once you have him transcended. But in order to get him awakened and transcended, it's like an extra 500 and something frags. It's a ridiculous amount. So it costs a lot to get him there. And like we've mentioned, there's already really good options for the field. So it's not that he wouldn't work there. It's just that he really shines in rallies or running rallies. And not even as the leader of the rally, more like the co-leader of the rally. He can run as the leader, but you will most often see him as the co-leader. Okay? And again, we'll run through his kit so you'll see exactly why. First off, let's actually look at his super weapon. Okay? So first off, when Bard uses a rage skill, reduces defense and travel speed of the enemy squad hit by the skill by 34%. And 20% respectively for 3 seconds. So every time he uses a rage skill, reduces the defense of everybody that he hits by 34% and reduces their travel speed by 20%. Now you're going to say, what do you mean by everybody he hits? Well, his first skill, Mass Annihilation, deals, right, is a rage skill requiring 1,000, deals damage to up to 3 enemy targets in a circular area at a factor of 13,000. So he's already targeting 3 targets at 13,000. Damage taken by each enemy target reduces by 15% for every additional enemy target. And I've had this verified. I've already done the testing myself. This means that the first target gets hit for 13,000. The second target gets hit for 15% less. And the third target gets hit for 15% less than that. Okay? Now, if this skill kills an enemy squad, has a 50% chance to immediately recover 60 rage. So if you're all of a sudden swarming him, right? If you're swarming these, his Julia Bard, or even a Bard Nora or a Bard Johnny, something like that. If you're doing that, you're basically just helping him recover rage, helping him hit harder, helping him hit faster. Okay? So swarming a Bard rally is typically a bad idea. Next, we got Purge Weakness, which is a passive skill, increasing range squad attack by 30%. If the enemy is inflicted by silence, increases basic attack damage dealt to them by 21%. So let's think real quick back to Julia that we just talked about, right? We've got Julia up here. Julia up here. Right? She's going to be silencing every ability, right? And then reducing the basic attack damage by 20%. Meanwhile, Bard, right, which as we're going through, is inflicting more basic attack damage when they're silenced. So every time a skill goes off, right, now we're dealing additional basic attack damage. So it really synergizes well with Julia. Next, we've got Invincible Fleet. During sieges, increases ranged squad defense by 25% and HP by 25%. Both of those are really exactly what raiders or ranged need. HP and defense. And 25% is pretty okay. It's not 30%, but 25% of both is awesome. Or is pretty good. Okay? Especially when you're getting attack here at 30%. So you're basically getting 25% of HP, 25% attack or defense, 30% attack, and then an increase in damage. So he really is tanky and dealing more damage. And then lastly, of his main skills, you're looking at direct confrontation. During rallies, increases skill damage dealt to garrison squad by 54%, but all damage taken from garrison squad is increased by 12.5%. So it does make him a little glass cannony, but remember, we're already having a huge amount of, or a decent amount of HP and defense, a good amount of ranged squad, good amount of additional damage, and then a good amount of damage here. Once you get him awakened, all of a sudden now we're dealing 14,300, makes him one of the hardest hitters, right? Again, we're talking about 3, but we increase our own attack by 30% for 3 seconds, right? So now we're hitting even harder and increasing our attack by 30%. So now we're getting 60% squad attack, 25% HP and defense, right? And that's when he's awakened. And then when you get him transcended, and this is where it really matters, we got to look at those transcended skills, right? Purge weakness, right? When we look at it transcended, it goes from range squad attack of 30%. If they're inflicted with silence, increases the basic attack damage by 21%. Now we go to 38% and increases the travel speed by 12%. So those are static. And then you get into that still at 21% when they're inflicted by silence. So we're getting additional 8% and an additional 12% movement speed or travel speed. When we look at Invincible Fleet, that's where we're talking 25% HP, 25% HP. These are both during sieges. He wakens up a little bit, and this is where we can start to see him used in the field a little bit. Because now his range squad is no longer attached to him being during sieges. It's now a flat 30%. Right? So now he's doing a flat 30% range or 38% attack, a flat 30% defense, and then 25% HP during sieges. And then here we have this other one here during rallies, increases damage dealt. So we're still getting that 54%. Right? So we're still getting that damage squad by 54%. But this is where it really matters. All damage taken from garrison squad is only increased by 6%. So we're losing 6.5% of that. Makes it a lot more tanky. And then when using skills, there's a 20% chance to deal additional damage at a factor of 3,200. So we're going to punch a little extra. And then what we're also seeing, once he's awakened, we're talking 15,000 damage and only a 10% reduction. So the first target is going to be 15,000. The next target is going to be 13,500. And the target after that is going to be, I couldn't tell you if it's going to be 11,000 or if it's going to be like 1190 or something like that. But it's like one of those situations where it's only a 10% taken down. 65% and increase his own attack by 30%. So we still got that. Oh, we don't. We're getting another additional increase of attack by 30%. So you can see how his attack just stacks, right? And then once you have him awakened, instead of doing 3, we're doing 4 targets, right? So now we're doing 4 targets at 15,000. I mean, it's ridiculous. So he works really, really well with Julia in the field. Run him and Julia in the field and you'll have a really, or not in the field, sorry, in rallies, and you'll have a really good time. Run him or run Julia first, Bard second. You'll have a really good one. Run Bard first and Nora second. You might have a decently tanky one. I'm still not sold on Nora. I got to look through her again too. And we'll do that together. You can make your own opinion. But in my opinion, they gave her the legendary, but just not the legendary damage or stat. So she's just really a placeholder for legendary. Okay. And then, or obviously Johnny, depending on what you're going into, but Johnny's a special pick. We'll talk about when we get to him. Speaking of Nora, let's actually talk about her now. Because she is one of those heroes that everybody ends up getting. This is the one that they just awakened. And unfortunately, the majority comments on this one that I've read so far are negative. Not necessarily just because of her kit, but also because of her character design. They've done a lot in this game to sexify it, and I got no problem with that, to be honest. It doesn't bother me as much. But this is one of those examples where they just went from a hero, and then they've basically just been stripping her down more and more every time they've re-edited her or redesigned her. And I just don't know why they're putting so much resources into her herself. Because she really isn't that influential, and especially when we go through her skills, right? So first and foremost, Reborn Guardian. She's bringing attack, which in the talent trees of it all, attack isn't great because the meta of the game is skills, right? We want to deal more skill damage. We want to pump up more skills, and this one doesn't do this. This one just adds, you know, increased squad damage, increased basic damage, reduced skill damage, right? Which isn't exactly what we want to deal with. But let's go through her skills and we'll see what she puts out. First, we got weakness detection. Rage required of 1,000, increasing squad attack by 46%, which isn't bad, right? That's pretty decent. Squad's basic attacks deal bonus damage of 3750 for 2 seconds. So basically, 2 basic attacks are going to deal 3750, which, when you add it up, is only 7,500. Even if you're getting 46% because of your squad attack, 7,500 is still not very much. Okay? Next, we've got this one, increasing range squad HP by only 18%. During sieges, increases squad's basic attack damage by 24%. So you're getting extra basic attack damage, right? Right, which is pairing into her attack tree. But 18% HP is still pretty low. Next, we're going to go here. We've got Dynamic Vision as a passive skill, increasing her attack and defense by 20%. But this is really what she's going to be used for. This is really why I suggest you awaken her. Okay? It's not because of how she'll be in the field or in rallies. It's really because of this. It's because she's already reducing 12% of or she's increasing your research speed by 12%. And then reducing an additional half hour in the research lab. Okay? So, I mean, don't get me wrong. If you already have a decent amount of reduction in that time, a half hour isn't much. But when you compound that with 12% additional research speed, which is already going to take time off of some of your really long researches, and because this effect applies when she's not deployed, so this is just a static effect that happens all the time. You know, this is going to be one of those moments, sorry for the pause, this is one of those moments where I kind of look at it and I realize the wording is really confusing. And I'm not actually sure on how this actually plays out. Because it's separated by periods, and there's periods throughout. But I'm curious whether the effect that it's applying, and this is the way that I'm assuming it is, the effect that it's applying without being deployed is the research lab and the increased research speed. But the way that this is written could also mean that your range squad attack and your range squad defense is just increased by 20% passively. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it could be worded that way. You know? I haven't tested, so I don't know. I assume it's just the research speed in the research lab that gets that's affected applied when not deployed. But because this is said afterwards, it could be effective to everything. I don't think it is, but it could be effective to everything. Next, we've got Camouflage, reduces counter damage received by 17%. Basic attacks have a 20% chance to reduce the enemy defense by 16% for 3 seconds. So this one's kind of interesting because theoretically this could stack. There's no reason why this couldn't. Because if it's every 3 seconds, it's a 20% chance. This could mean that you could hit it twice. So you could get a defense reduction of like 32%, which is pretty good. And if you're really lucky, you'll have a second where it might actually even be 48%. You know what I mean? But that would be like super lucky. And then reduces counter damage received by 17%. So it makes it a little bit tankier. Again, it's just that her skills, right? Her skills are just subpar. Yes, 46% is nice. But we just went over Sophie, for example. Not Sophie, sorry. Julia, for example. And let's look at Julia. We get Range squad attack, 20%, which is more than hers. Skill damage, 17%, which is more. HP, 40%. Right? We just looked through Bard. Bard's got a lot of attack stuff going on too, right? We just looked through Bard. Range squad attack, 30%. Defense goes up to 30%. 25% HP. So it's just that Nora, in comparison to the other options, I mean, it just doesn't play. I think you'll still see Julia Bard over Nora Bard or Bard Nora. Do you know what I mean? Like, you'll still see Julia Bard over Julia Nora. I think you'll still even see Julia Lewis over Julia Nora, in my opinion. But that's just coming from me, and I'm not a range main, so I couldn't actually tell you. They did, however, make her more beautiful, and I obviously give them credit for making her eye-catching, but I definitely think they dropped the ball on her skills. Okay. Now, lastly, in regards to the rally heroes, we are going to talk about the last one that has any purpose in rallying, and the tough part about him is that he really doesn't really have any other use, and what's even worse is that he's only useful in a very specific rally. First, I gotta find the guy. Where the heck is he? Why can't... There he is. Mr. Johnny Carey. Now, Mr. Johnny Carey is coming in last year in the rally situation just because he's very specific. Again, he's bringing the attack skill tree. So he's not dealing as much rage skill damage. And with all the rest, if you look at how focused everything is on rage, that's already at a disadvantage. Okay? So the Jester, first one here we're talking about, deals damage to the target at 12,000 and reduces target's healing effect by 40% for 3 seconds. So they introduced Johnny right after Thunder came out in response to Thunder. And this is obviously one of the ways that they had that. So they would have Johnny running rallies against Thunder, because once you get rid of Thunder's healing factor, he doesn't really kind of have anything else. Okay. Now we've got Maverick as a passive skill. When outside Alliance territory, increases range squad attack by 30% and defense by 10%. So a decent amount of attack, kind of subpar on the defense. But when you look at, they don't want to have one skill adding too much individually, it balances out. Now we've got increasing skill damage by 1% every second up to 11 seconds, or up to 11%. After an assistant unleashes the raid skill, the buff will reset and stack again. After an assistant unleashes the raid skill, the buff will reset and stack again. So increases skill damage by 3.5% up to 38.5%. That's at full volume. And then when the assistant unleashes a rage skill, the buff will reset and stack again. So you can just start to see he's outdated. I mean, having these not as consistent buffs, right? Having to ramp up. Also means that you're never really going to get this to 38.5%, because if you put him with if you look at the other ones, for example, Julia's going to create so much rage that her skills are going to be going off more often, which means that it's never going to really buff up to every second. It's not going to take 11 seconds to stack. It means that you're going to be having those skills go off every 5 to 6 seconds, which means that you're really only getting a skill damage increase up to 15, maybe 20%. Right? And here's the thing. If he's going to be increasing skill damage, why does he have the attack tree? Because the attack in fact counters the skill damage that you're getting. Right? You see how he doesn't really play really well. And then lastly, extermination during sieges. Basic attacks have a 20% chance to deal an additional 3,120 damage. So expect that, once every 5 seconds. So good damage, decent damage. 12,000 is still a little low. He's a little outdated. Little outdated on his skills. And even when you get him awakened and he's dealing 13,200 and reducing target healing effects by 50%. If you think about it, because healed no longer has that big of an influence. Yes, you still see Thunders around. So in the lower brackets, you can still see Johnny in rallies and stuff like that if your Thunders are really a problem. But he's just a little outdated, and he's bringing the attack skill tree. So the attack skill tree. talent tree, pardon me. So it's kind of counterproductive to what his kit's putting out. But those are the 4 rally heroes, folks. That's Julia, Bard, Nora, and Johnny. Who would you pair Johnny Carey with? Well, again, depending on what you're going to be focusing on. If you're going up against, say, you'd put him up first against a Thunder garrison. And you're going to make sure that he's got someone who's going to be dealing a lot of damage, like Bard. Or like Julia. But again, you're not going to be leading with him. You're going to be co-leading with him. So you'll probably co-lead with him and Julia lead. You might lead with Bard, but he's bringing you a defense tree. So it's, again, not necessarily going to work. He just doesn't have a position because of his tree. He needs a reworking or something. But that's really about it, guys. That's all for the rally heroes. So now we've gone through 8 of the 12. So you can now do the math and figure out who we're going to go through for garrison. But don't forget to tune in when we do, folks. If you like everything we've gone through so far, go ahead and hit that like button. Follow the channel, subscribe to it, fill out that notification bell so you get any new drops whenever we drop new content. And we drop it pretty often. We do have a Pompeii replay every week and a podcast interview every week as well that both get posted to the channel. So we would love to have you tuning in for those as well. Other than that, folks, love, peace, chicken grease, and until next time, stay lifted.